Eclipse.
Who's that guy?
Alright, well, while Noob is working, what we're going to do today is we're going to build the foundation for like a Notepad task manager kind of app. So we're going to learn a little bit about using list activities, a little bit about MySQLite, which is the database version that Android runs. We're going to look a little bit at how views are set up using XML. And we're also going to get to use a little bit of time working with list cursors, which are how Android is going to receive objects out of our database. You see what we got going on here? No, I did create a project from existing source and then linked to it.
Mirror here.
And then once, browse it, grab it, and then when you're done, under build target, select Android 2.3.3.
You told about the filter thing, right?
Oh, you might have to set that up more.
Yeah.
I'm going to go through that because these guys already have it set up.
I'll type it up in here and then I'll
Alright, so what you're going to do is, I'm sure you guys already know where all this stuff is. But you're going to go into source, you're going to open up Notepad v1.java and notes db-adapter.java. I'm going to start off by kind of going through the notes db-adapter.java file. What this is the interface that we have for creating our MySQLite database and handling our database. And this is going to be what our program is going to check with to do all of our queries and our adds and our drops and things like that. So right up here at the top, you can see we're getting our content values, which is essentially what you're going to be passing back and forth. We got some global variables here for our keys, for title, body, and ID. These are the three things that we're going to use to identify any node or task or whatever it is that we're going to be adding into this database. We've got a tag here, which is what we're going to call this class when we're calling it from our Notepad function. We've got a database helper, which is kind of like a buffer to store a table entry when we're grabbing it. And we have our actual SQL database. So this goes ahead and creates our database for us. It's going to create a database called data. It's going to have a table in the database called notes. And it's got a context MCDX. What the context does is that's how Android is going, or the application is going to talk to the Android OS and get the database set up over this context. So we have a few functions in here. There is an opener, which is essentially going to, if we have a database, open the database. If we don't already have a database created, it's going to create it for us and set up our table for us. Then there's a close down here that closes the database. We have a create note function, which is going to take a title and a string body from our application and put it into the database, and a delete note, which does exactly the opposite. It will pull an item from the database. Fetch all notes simply returns a cursor to the top of our table in our database. A cursor is essentially a pointer for a database. Because our Android phones are limited on resources, it's not feasible to pass an entire table back to our application. So instead they've set up something called cursors. It points to the first list in the table, and you can move through the table just like you would with a cursor in the screen, and grab individual items out of the database. Fetch note does just that. It grabs one item out of the database using the cursor again. And update note. So if we already have an item in the table, we can change something in the table to whatever we want to update. So that's kind of, this is set up for you because dealing with databases in Android can be a little bit tricky. They're very, very picky, so I just went ahead and grabbed this so we don't have to try and write that. So let's start off by getting our views going. If you go over to your Package Explorer, look in your Resources folder, and then in your Layout folder, you see a notepad list.xml. This is going to be your main view for this project. When you open it, you're going to get some weird kind of GUI for building your views. Just go ahead and click on the XML editor at the bottom. You can see the actual XML. All Android layout files must start with the header line. So we're using XML version 1.0, UTF-8. The next line is usually the layout definition. So we've got a linear layout here. We're using the namespace for Android, just a standard namespace. We're going to wrap our content, which just means it's going to use up whatever portion of the screen has available to it. And this is just essentially a blank form for our layout. We're going to need to change that so that we can hold a list of notes. So how we can do that is we can set up a couple of views within our view. The first thing we're going to need is we're going to need a list view, which is going to provide a framework for us to show each individual table entry. And then beyond that, we're going to need a text view, which is going to be the individual items within that view. So let's go ahead and write those. So we're going to need a list view, which is just a simple interface for viewing lists. You only need one tag here. We're not creating a list view object here, so we don't need an open tag, then content, and close tag. We're simply setting up what's going to be inside of the list view. So we're going to put an Android ID, which is essentially what Android is going to use when we call our list view. It's how it's going to check for what we want out of the table. We're going to grab the Android ID out of our list. So this is going to grab items out of the list that it's trying to create via its ID. And then we're just going to say how we want it to be laid out. So it's the same as what you had earlier, or above here, layout width. It's going to be wrap content. And also layout. It's essentially saying take up whatever horizontal space on the screen you can. And that's all you need to get a list view set up. So that's our framework for our list. Beyond that, we need a text view, which is going to be, again, the individual rows in that list. We're going to grab it with the Android IDs. And we want to use an empty All right, so basically what this says is if we are not filling that list view element with an actual item in the table, then we're going to leave it blank. So, for example, if you only have 3 notes in your database and you've got 30 lines available on your screen, it's only going to use up 3 lines, and the rest of the 30 lines will all be in. Then we're going to say, just like before, that our Android layout for height and width are going to be wrap content.
This will make the height 50-50 or whatever.
It basically means that this element is going to take up whatever space on the screen it can. So if this is your screen, you've got the top bar, which is like your status bar, and then another bar that's got like the name of your program. And then what this is going to do is going to say take up however much space on the screen you can, and then create a list view, which is just going to be however many list items you can fit with that font size on the screen. And then each text view is going to be what fills this list view slot. And so it's basically saying text view, take up whatever the entire slot is. Instead of, I mean, you could specify it to where it's only 60 pixels wide or whatever. We just want it to go ahead and wrap.
Is everybody, is anyone lost or anything? All good?
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So this grabs what size vote. Now, we don't actually have anything to fill into these items yet. We're just saying if there's nothing there, then leave it empty. So what we're going to say is if there is something there, we want to fill it with text. So we're going to grab some Android text here, and we're going to set it equal to a string that our database is going to push to us. And no notes is the default value. So if the field is empty when you receive it, instead of just being a bunch of blank lines on the screen, it's going to show a line that says no notes. And we'll set up this string in a few minutes. But as of right now, just believe that it exists and we'll move on. And so that's it. That is a basic Android layout. It's going to give you, what I was telling you here, you're going to have a list view, and then within the list view, you're going to have a bunch of list items. So we're going to go ahead and save that. Now, so what this is doing is if the content is empty, it's going to fill with a default value. We need to have a function that we can call so that if what it's returning is not empty, we can fill it with the string that we get from the database. So we're going to go to our layout, and we're going to create a new XML file. So right click on layout, click new file, click XML file. Let's call this node row. You're going to get, again, a weird Eclipse version of what they want you to see. Just click on the source tab, and we get some code. You'll see that Eclipse automatically puts in the XML version tag for you, which is really nice because, like I said earlier, every single XML file, and you'll have a lot of them, has to have that at the top. I think it's kind of annoying to type in. So now we've got this new file, which is essentially going to be what the program will call when we retrieve a list, when we retrieve a text item. So we're going to go ahead and make our text view to fill in that row, and it's going to be classified by ID, and we're going to by Android ID empty. I'm sorry, I'm grabbing the wrong layout. So if the item that we grab has an ID, which means it's not an empty item, then we're going to get text 1. And if we look back in the notes database, we have a text 1 query. So where did it go? I don't remember where I put text 1. It's in here though, and it works. We'll find it in a little bit because we're just kind of setting up some free stuff here. But what text 1 is the string that the database is returning. It's in your buffer. And so we're saying if it's got an ID, if it's not a blank